Just starting to record that now. So, yeah, they'll be able to check it out later anyway, no problem. Well, look, Giselle and I get a lot of emails regarding people in and around tennis matches and what they should do, particularly young players and parents not totally sure on what their kids should be doing in and around matches, and also for adults. Now, Giselle and I spend a lot of time travelling on the tour, so we saw, I guess, what happens at the top level, and we learn a lot around that also. And we had the opportunity to be able to implement a lot of things that hadn't been done before. We were able to, I guess, improve the way things were done, particularly for a lot of the Australian athletes. So I just wanted to share some of that knowledge with some people, partly just to help educate people and also, just to help make an impact back into the game a little bit more than anything else. So what we're going to do to start off with is I want to talk to you on what I feel is probably the most important part about a winning formula for matches. Tonight's not going to be over technical. I'm not really going to talk about what you actually do in a match to win a match. It's more about preparation. So preparation is really what wins matches for a lot of players. I know when I was working with Leighton Hewitt for 10 years, before we'd get to a tournament, 48 hours out before, he would start his preparation for his matches then. And he was quite intense, quite focused with it all. Obviously took it very, very serious. So I learnt a huge amount from that process myself. So what I like to use is what I call the 48-hour rule. So if you guys have got pen and paper there, you might want to jot some stuff down because I've got quite a bit to go through with you guys tonight. And my aim is if you can get a couple of bits and pieces out of this webinar, then that's fantastic. And we can go from there. If you guys have got any questions after that, you can just shoot me an email and I'll endeavour to get back to you. So have your pen and paper ready and we'll get into it. So the 48-hour rule, so what I mean by that is, starting your preparation 48 hours out from the tournament. And that means, things around hydration, nutrition, organising transport and those sorts of things. But also training, like what sort of training should you do 2 days before a tournament? You really want to start to look at what we call tapering, or, you want to do a lot more shorter in duration, higher intensity sessions, and you want it to be totally specific. So you don't really want to do anything unspecific, like go for a 5 kilometre linear run. You want everything to be on court, foot speed, agility based. And the most important thing is you want to really work on your priorities. So what are your priorities? What do you want to get out of the match coming up? That's where you want to focus on a couple of days leading into the tournament, because they're sort of the habits and the momentum that we want to bring into the matches. So that's really important. 48 hours out, training specifically for what you want to work on. You also want to encourage players to switch on a couple of days out from a match. Now, when I say that, when you're working with younger players, you're not going to get them 2 days before a match having them, totally focusing on the match because they've got school and lots of other things going on. But what we want to do is just start to encourage them just to think about the match, think about what they've been doing during their training session, what things have you been focused on, because where our focus goes, energy flows. So what we're focused on, that's generally what we're gonna put our time and energy into. So we want to just encourage them and just start to create the habit of just starting to think about the tournament coming up in a couple of days' time. We just call that switching on, thinking about the outcome, and, really just encouraging them to understand how that all works. Another really big one is, being organised. When I say that, I mean like having simple things like accommodation book, just double check that's okay if you are going to be travelling to a tournament. Transport, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get around within the tournament? Have you actually signed up and registered for the tournament? What's the schedule like? How many matches do you think you'll be playing a day? Because you're going to need to mentally prepare for that as well. What about hitting partners? Have you got anybody organised? Do you know anyone else that's going to be at the tournament? that you can buddy up with, etc. And, you know, obviously communicating with the coach as well, making sure that they're on board, they're going to be at the tournament and what times, etc. So everybody's on the same field. So that's sort of what I like to work in within the 48-hour rule, but a big bulk of it just comes down to the preparation. I can guarantee you, like, you know, your Serenas and your Roger Federers and your Novaks, look, I've been around those guys quite a bit, and I know how, not even how organised and prepared they are, but their team. You know, a lot of you out there, you guys haven't got the privilege of having like a team like they do, because they've got, you know, the capacity to be able to do it. But, you know, you need to manage a lot of these things yourself. But winning starts with preparation. The more we can understand that, and the more we can get that underneath our skins, and the more it just becomes habitual to have this process of being prepared, the easier winning will come. It all just flows on to actually hitting that winning point to win the match. So remember that, the 48-hour rule, remember those sort of principles within it, and that's a good starting point for you. So what I want to move on to now is give you guys a little bit of insight into things that you can do like the night before a match. So we've talked about sort of 2 days and a day out for matches. What can you do the night before a match? What's important? What are the, I guess, the critical things to do? Some of these things are quite basic, but to be honest with you, simple and basic, doing them consistently is always going to give us the best result over trying and do fancy things and try and do things that we haven't really been tried and tested before. So I'm going to run through a couple of those for you now. So the night before, and this is also applicable for during the tournament too. So say your tournament starts on a Friday afternoon. So what would you do on the Thursday or the Thursday night, but also on the Saturday and the Saturday night and potentially the Sunday as well. So this applies pretty much like before the tournament starts and every night the tournament's going. So we've got food and hydration. Okay, so I'll go into that a little bit at the end of our time together. But food and hydration are huge. Basically, with your food and hydration, it starts pretty much 24 hours before. We want to start fueling the body with the right foods. And hydration, I consider to be probably the most important aspect of preparing for matches. Hydration, people don't really realise how much of an impact it has. You know, our brain consists of a huge amount of liquid and fluid, and obviously our body as well, it's over 70%. So you can imagine if we were to drop 2 to 3% of our hydration levels, it has a huge effect on how we perform, you know, even on a cellular level, how our cells react and communicate within each other, within that their processes. So staying hydrated is something that we really want to focus on. Now, there's a couple of ways we can do that. So first of all, what I like to do is encourage people to understand what their ideal hydration levels are. Everyone is different. You get like someone like a Pat Rafter who would sweat litres and litres of sweat over a 5-set match. Now, you guys need to remember that predominantly a lot of the tournaments that you're playing in run through summer. That's when a bulk of them are, and it's obviously the hotter time of year, no matter where you are in the world. So, you know, you're going to be more inclined to sweating, and even just being out in the elements, you're going to lose fluid out of your body. So you want to work out how to get your ideal rates. So a little ratio that I like to use is you times your body weight in kilos. So sorry if you're in the States or in Europe and you're using pounds, but in kilos, we times your body weight by 0.03. So if you're 80 kilos, you go 80 times 0.03, whatever that comes up to. That's like your base hydration rate. That's what you would be consuming over the course of a 24-hour period without exercise and without considering the elements, so our climate. So on top of that, so say you get 2 litres, okay, so you should be consuming 2 litres a day. Now, on top of that, for every hour of exercise, I like to put 500 to 600 millilitres on top of that. So if you were practicing for an hour and a half, or say you ended up doing 2 hours of exercise, you'd actually consume potentially another 1.2 litres of water over that time. It's really important to understand how that works. If you are someone that perspires a lot, you obviously need to look at upping that up a little bit. You'd probably be up around the 750 mils per hour of exercise. And it's a matter of playing around with it. Some people really struggle to consume 2 to 3 litres of water a day because they're not used to it. So my advice on that is just start to ease into it. Best way to do it is just to sip on water, not to have big glasses of water at one time, because it's going to bloat you, and there's a digestive process your body has to go through to pass the water through the system also. Okay, so that's a little bit on hydration. Now that's just getting your hydration rates right all the time. So we want to be able to maintain that. Obviously, the longer the matches, the longer the tournaments go, you need to be able to manage that really effectively for yourselves. Okay, so we want to have our hydration levels. We want to prepare before the matches. We want to have those at the right levels. And a good indication of where your hydration levels are at is when you pass urine. Is you want your urine to be clear. If your urine's clear, then that's a good sign for us. If your urine's like a slight yellowy colour, we need to up our water intake a bit more. And if your urine's like a dark yellow colour, then that's really not a good sign for us. We need to concentrate on really trying to get our hydration levels up. It can take 24 to 48 hours to do that. So staying hydrated and keeping your levels right is number one priority, because it does take time to turn it around. So I'll go through some snacks, etc., and some food with you guys at the end of the webinar, and because that's an important factor as well. But you want to have your food and your water prepared the night before a match. Okay, you want to prepare your body. So how do we do that? Well, the night before a match, what I encourage everybody to do, and this is highly effective, is to use a foam roller, or if you're familiar with self-trigger point release, you do that. And you don't have to necessarily work on your whole body. You want to actually just focus on areas that you know where you carry your tension in your body. So for me, for example, it's around my glutes and my hips, so into my adductors and my hips and my lower back. So the night before I perform in the sports I play, I spend quite a bit of time on those areas. For younger athletes, we encourage them just to get in and pretty much give everything a little bit of a go over, because at their age, they're probably not too familiar with where they're carrying a lot of their tension. They're still yet to work that out. So night before, the foam rolling, we're doing some trigger point work, and we're also doing some static stretching. So we're just trying to elongate muscle out, holding our stretches for 45 seconds to a minute and a half. And, you want to always aim to do at least 5 up towards 10 stretches. I always encourage people to do 6 to 7 lower body and 3 to 4 upper body static stretch holds. But once again, depending on where you're carrying your tension, that's where you're going to focus your static stretching. All we're trying to do here, preparing the body, is we're just trying to release tension out of the body so that when you step out and warm up the next morning, your body's in a good state. Everything's elongated, all the tension's released out, and you're ready to go. So also the night before, you want to check things over. So you want to make sure you got playing gear, you got your equipment, your transport's organised, and most importantly, make sure you set your alarm for yourself, because that does happen a lot. Players and parents and kids, etc., waking up and they're rushing around, and all of a sudden their adrenaline levels go through the roof. By the time they get on court, they could have already crashed and burned. So make sure you've got everything organised, the bag's packed, everything's ready to go, and all your snacks, etc., are ready to go for the next day. And my last point on the night before, and this is something that I've really just started doing the last 18 months myself, is you just want to get into a state where you're nice and relaxed at night. What I like to do is I'll do some meditation and prayer every night before I go to bed, and that involves doing some deep breathing exercises. I'm not going to go too much in depth in that now, because it's going to chew up a little bit of time. But that's highly, highly effective to get a good night's sleep. Some people like reading before they go to bed as well. I try to encourage people to steer clear of watching TV. Listening to music's okay, but if we can get you used to doing some form of meditation or prayer, coupled with some deep breathing exercises, getting yourself into a good state before you go to sleep. And you want to aim, really, really super important, you want to aim to have about at least 7 to 10 hours sleep, depending on your age, the night before a match. So all those things that we've covered already, 48 hours before, leading into the night before, these things make a massive impact on how you perform. You can imagine, if you're not having enough sleep, your hydration levels are down, you turn up, you haven't eaten well the night before, and you walk on court, you're going to be in a much, much worse state than you could be. So I'm all about getting you into what we call a peak state. So peak state just doesn't happen like that. It's not like a matter of flicking a switch. It's a combination of many things, and we need to prepare for them. And that's all I'm taking you through tonight, is how to get you into a peak state when you walk on the court to play your match. So the morning of the tournament, let's write that down. Morning of the tournament, the goal is to get you into a peak state. So what we want to do is encourage you to get into some what we call morning rituals. So what I encourage players to do, and I've started doing this with some younger athletes I work with. When I was working with Leighton Hewitt, it was, this isn't probably potentially something that he would have been open to. He probably would have tried it, but I wasn't practicing it at the time. But I know, like someone like a Novak Djokovic is right into this stuff, and that's encouraged me to look into it deeper, and it's really made a benefit on me and the athletes I've implemented with. So breathing and visualization. Once again, I'm not going to go into, the ins and outs of it all. You guys will have to do a bit of research, and I do have a blog out on breathing visualization. So breathing visualization, all we're trying to do here is prepare the mind. So you prepare the mind and the body's going to follow. So you want to do some deep breathing exercises. We want to oxygenate the body, but we also want to look at the visualization aspect. So what we're looking to do with that is see the match, feel the match, see yourself in a positive state, see yourself reacting to situations that in the past you haven't probably reacted as well as you could have. So this is your opportunity to visualize it, and we know from research now that the more visualization we do, the more chance we give ourselves when we come into those situations to deal with them the right way. Okay, so you got your breathing visualizations, and then super important is we want to back that up with some mobility. So mobility is more looking at opening up chains of movement rather than almost like holding a static stretch. So mobilization involves opening up your rotational patterns through your body, opening up your hip joint, so getting the hip functioning really well. Look at the shoulder joint, it can get put into thousands of different positions. So we want to make sure that the joint is opened up in as many of those positions as we can. But we want to make sure that we've got a lot of what we call opening up the kinetic chain. So what's happening from the foot, the knee, the hip, our thoracic rotation through to our shoulder sling. We want to make sure that all those movements are nice and loose and opened up. And there's a range of stuff that you can do to combat that. I encourage you to look into that if you're not already sort of following a mobility plan. Once again, I can give you like 15 modes to do, mobility exercises to do. But what I would do over time, the more I got to know your body, was I would probably narrow them down to about 6 to 7, because otherwise it's just chewing up too much time. So you narrow it down to 6 and 7. Once again, what are your priority areas? What areas do we got to focus on? That's what we're going to mobilise. Okay, so we want to start hydrating our body again, because just think, you've just woken up. Okay, you've been asleep for 7 to 10 hours. You haven't had anything to drink during that time. So we want to start to hydrate your body. So straight away, before you leave the house, you want to have 2 cups of water, or around 400 to 500 mils of water before you leave the house. You want to eat a good breakfast. I'll go through that with you a little bit later on. What are some good breakfast options for you? And most importantly, you want to stay positive. So you want to be, start talking yourself into winning matches and talking yourself into playing well. focus on the outcome that you want. What is your outcome? What are you going to achieve in the day? That would have been what you should have been visualizing in your first preparation of the morning. Okay, so morning wrap-up's done. You've walked out of the house, you've done those things. You get to the courts, you have a look around, you start to get a bit nervous, which is totally normal, and that's a good thing because it means something to you. All right. What we want to do now is we want to warm the body up. Okay. So what I do is I like to give players a good thorough warm-up routine before they play their first match, and then hopefully they win. And then every subsequent match after that, what we want to encourage you to do is to do an abbreviated version of the warm-up. Because if you're playing potentially 3 matches over a day, which isn't uncommon, what can happen is if you're warming up for 20 minutes each match, that's an hour of exercise over the course of the day, plus then you're on court playing your match, so it's going to be way too much. So I've got my warm-up routine down with my players down to about 8 to 15 minutes, depending on the player. But look, 8 to 10 minutes is doable. And then the way I like to sequence it, you might want to write this down because this is going to be important for you to remember. So first match steps, we want to increase the heart rate. Okay, so how do we do that? Skipping, running around the court. We want to do some multi-directional movement as well. There goes 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, each 30-second period, we want to increase the intensity of what we're doing. Just give me one moment. Okay, so we want to increase the intensity of the exercise. So we're increasing the heart rate, increasing the circulation around the body. After we've done that, we want to mobilise. So we want to go through our mobility routine again. We want to make sure that everything feels nice and limber and everything's in unison, everything's working symmetrically. Then we want to activate. So we want to, these are the areas that I want you to focus on with the activation. So we've got the abdominal region, so we call it your core, in particular your transverse abdominis. So we want to do an exercise to activate the core. We want to do an exercise to activate the glutes. So we can do like a supine bridge. We can do some band monster walks, those sorts of things. And we also want to activate the shoulder girdle. So doing your external rotation, preferably getting your arm up here because it's a lot more specific than doing anything with the band down low. So anything that you're doing, that you're sort of moving your shoulders around, but you want to make sure it's not just quick movement like that. You want to do slow and controlled and feel the muscles working and switching on that we're actually targeting. So once we've done that, then we want to move into some movement specificity. So what I like to do is get players to do 3 sets of 10 repetitions of shadowing on a court or at the side of the court if there's matches going on. So we do 10 shots. Make sure you're moving around. You want to move around at a good tempo, so we want to build the intensity up. So you do 10 shots at, say, 50% rest, 10 shots at 70% rest, and then 10 shots going absolutely flat out, 100% intensity. Once you've done that, boom, go grab a drink of water, towel down, you're ready to jump on court and win a match. Okay, nice simple process, but we're ticking all the boxes, and you should be able to get that down to 8 to 15 minutes. For your second match and your third match, etc., I would cut out the initial increase of the heart rate. So I wouldn't do the running and the skipping components. I'll go straight into the mobility, the activation, and then the movement specificity. That's what I always recommend and what I've found has worked best. Okay, so once you've warmed up for the match and you're aware of what you do subsequently moving on forward for other matches, then you're just sipping on water every 5 minutes till your match starts. Just make sure you're constantly just sipping water, a couple of mouthfuls, you're good to go. All right, so the match time comes around, you're about to walk on court. Now we talk about what we can do when we're in the match. So what can we do to help you play better? What can we do to help you win more matches? Just by simply learning a few strategies. Okay, number one is, and this is a big thing, Roger Federer's big on this, you can control what you can control. So very rarely would you see someone like Roger have a go at the umpires. He doesn't really try to overly intimidate his opponents like a Rafa or someone like that. He controls what he can control. He controls his environment, and it works highly effective for him. And I encourage everybody to learn to do the same thing, because the moment you realise I can't control the other person, I can't control that it was a bad call, but I can control how I react. I can control by letting that go and thinking, I'm not going to change it, but I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to just focus on controlling myself now. And the next point, getting ready to go. It's a lot easier to say it than it is to do it, but the more we try to do it, the easier it's going to become. Okay, so controlling what you can control. So let me ask you, what are some things that you think you can control during a match? I'll tell you a couple, and to be honest with you, there's not too many, okay? So we can't control the weather, we can't control bad calls, we can't control someone down the other end hooking us and giving us bad line calls, but we can control our attitude, all right? Massive, so important. There's nothing better than when you're playing a match and you're seeing someone down the other end of the court losing their junk. You know, and they just can't get it back, and it just spirals out of control. You know you're a massive chance that they're beating themselves. Okay, so attitude is always number one. Everything else is going to follow after that. Keeping it positive. We can control the intensity that we're performing at court. So we can hustle, we can chase everything down, we can get to the ball as quick as we can. We can keep our chest up. We can control our posture and our movement posture. That's all revolves around your attitude and your intensity. Okay, what else can we control? From a technical perspective, we can control things that we've been focusing on in our lessons. Okay, now we don't want to overanalyze, because that can lead to, overanalyzing things can lead to paralysis. So you're walking thinking, oh, I'm not doing this, and I've got my shoulder angle here and there. We don't want to do that. That's what you want to focus on in practice. And practice it. So when you walk on court, it just becomes habitual, that it just happens for you. Okay, what I mean by technique is it's just the little things like, am I getting to the ball? Am I setting myself in the right position? Am I contacting the ball out in front? All those little things that formulate like good common technical sound advice. And they're the things that everyone should be focusing on. They're not the little intrinsic things. Okay, so we can control our technique, okay? We can control, really important, you can control your serve. Where am I going to put my serve? How hard am I going to hit it? I'm frustrated at the moment. I'm going to take a breath because I'm about to serve, and it's an important point, okay? Because you know how important it is. You can control the serve. Everything else pretty much, of course, you can control hitting your forehand and your backhand and a volley, but you're pretty much dictated by the other person that's hitting the ball, what position you're going to get into, where the serve is something you can control. And that's why your serve is so important to focus on and work on in practice, but also in a warm-up. Okay, don't take it for granted that you're just going to go and throw the arm over. Switch on when you're warming up and get that serve firing, and get it on sync for the start of the match in particular, because you want to start well. Okay, what else have I got here? All right, your hydration. So just drinking between change of ends, sipping on your water. Once again, I've explained to you how important that is. So things we can control: attitude, intensity, your technique, your serve, and your hydration. All right. Anything else you guys can think of that you can control, obviously go for it. If I've missed, there's still lots of things that we can natter on about, but they're I find the most important. Okay, in a match, you want to formulate like a routine. I mean, Rafael Nadal is a classic example. You'll see him; he'll put his water bottle a certain way, and he's got that OCD thing going on. But it works for him. Obviously, it's highly effective. So, what would happen if he wasn't to do those things? Would he lose a match? Would it affect how he played? I think it would dramatically. I really do. He's formulated this routine and these rituals, and they're highly effective for him. Whether they'd be highly effective for you and for me, well, that's a different story. So what you need to do is work out for yourself, and you do this in practice. You don't just rock up at a match and think, I'm going to do this and do that. You think, what do I need? What is going to make me play better? What sort of things are going to help me stay positive and upbeat? It could be in between points, like doing your Sharapova, turning your back to your opponent, taking a couple of deep breaths, turning around, re-engaging and going. So resetting, which is really, really important. For some people, it's a matter of between every point, having certain areas of the court that you know are always going to be there, like the corner of the junction of the sideline and the baseline. Looking at that point, focusing on that for 3 breaths and getting used to letting go, resetting, and then hitting yourself on the leg or whatever, and that just sort of triggers like positivity. Okay, for some people, it's looking at the net post. Looking at the net post, and that could trigger something for you that you're creating a routine for yourself. You're creating a positive habit to help just get into a bit of a rhythm with the match. So, I really, really encourage people to do that between points, between games, and obviously at change of ends. Like, what are you going to do at a change of end to help you perform better? What's going to work effectively for you? There's lots of different scenarios and different things we can do around that. So just on your hydration, so we're sipping on your hydration every chance you can get, basically sipping on your water. One thing that a lot of young players in particular do, they'll rock up to play a match and they'll have 3 bottles of a sports drink that they'll just drink through the whole match. So don't encourage players to do that at all, okay? It's all right to take, have them on the court with you or have them in a cooler bag, but pretty much prior to 45 minutes to an hour of exercise, depending on the intensity, they're not really going to do much. You're just basically putting sugar and some minerals into your body that aren't going to do much at all. So you don't really want to be having those things until you've passed the 45 minute to an hour mark. Prior to that, you want to just be sipping on, as much water as you can. Now, the sports drink that I recommend is very, very simple, very cost-effective. I wouldn't even call it a sports drink. It's just putting a little bit of Himalayan salt into some water. So just a tiny pinch of the Himalayan salt. What that does is we've got all the trace minerals in the salt because it's not refined, so we haven't bleached all the minerals out of it like normal white table salt. So tiny pinch of that into the water, and we're going to get the minerals out of it that we're losing through sweat. Okay, now from a carbohydrate perspective, which is what the sports drinks have in them, they have some minerals, but nowhere near as good as what you're going to get out of the Himalayan salt. And they've got some sugar, which is going to give you some carbohydrates into your bloodstream. Okay, so to combat that, I would just encourage people to have like a banana or a bite of a muesli bar. So the combination of the water with a tiny bit of Himalayan salt, a bite of a banana after 45 minutes to an hour, or a muesli bar, it's going to give you a much better effect and impact, positive impact, than I think having a sports drink and a candy bar or something like that. So if we can remember those 2 things, that's going to help you go a long way to managing your energy levels during a match as well. Okay, so food you want to eat in a match. So we want to eat carbohydrate-rich foods. So what are they? Well, carbohydrate-rich foods, they're like our starchy foods. So like a muesli bar, like I said, a banana. So some people might like have a couple of rice crackers or something along those lines, but they're going to give you your best bang for buck. You want to have small bites at a time. You need to consider that when we consume food, our body has to burn energy to break the food down. So if you're eating heavy food before a match and you're eating heavy food during a match, your body's going to feel quite sluggish because your body's sending energy basically to break that food down and turn it into energy. So small bites at a time, and you want to start eating, like I said, 45 minutes to an hour into the match. All right, so the match is done. Hopefully you've had a good result. What I want to encourage you to do after a match, we go into our cool-down phase. All right, so what's a cool-down phase involve? What it would involve for a professional athlete or a full-time athlete would be jumping on a stationary bike at a tournament. But for most players, it's just going to be just going for a walk for a couple of minutes, try to center yourself again. And what I mean by that is just try to let the match go, breathe through it, let go of any tension. You want to walk for about, 3 to 5 minutes, and have some time on your own, and then go back and see your team, and you can have a bit of a natter to them and start working through things. After that, you want to do some static stretches. So static stretching is, once again, it's holding stretches, 45 seconds to a minute and a half, and you would focus once again on areas where you feel tight through the match, and areas where you generally carry your tension in your body. We want to do those two things. So you walk to cool down, your static stretching after every match. Okay, that's a great idea just to help elongate everything out. And you want to just reset. So what cooling down does, it helps to lower your heart rate. Your return, basically, you want to try to return yourself back to a normal state as quick as you can. And I've found that they're the easiest ways to do it. If you want to have a cool shower or something like that, if it's really hot, then by all means go for it. So that sort of got you to the point where you've played a match and you've cooled down. So, there's some tips for you there already that, if I can guarantee if you can apply 80% of what I've just gone through with you now, you're going to be in a much better place to play your best tennis. Because I see a lot of people not doing hardly any of these things. And like I said before, if you prepare, you're going to get it done. Plan to prepare or prepare to fail, or not so much fail, but prepare to not play as good as you can. All right? And also, we don't want people getting injured. So after you cool down, what we want to look at doing is thinking about what do you do between matches, okay? Not sure if you've ever thought about this before and how much of an impact you think this can have. Have you ever thought about journaling how you're playing a match? So filling out a match journal. So my good mate Fabio from Functional Tennis, you can go to functionaltennis.com, or he's massive on Instagram. Just go to Functional Tennis. He has a range of tennis journals. In fact, if you go to our website, www.tennisfitness.com, you can go into our shop and you'll find his tennis journal and his practice journal in there. And you can purchase those online. They are fantastic. I think I've got his, he actually just sent me, he's just launched these. So this is his practice journal. So basically within it, so the match journal is very similar. So you're just writing in here, like what's your objective for your match, the date, who's your opponent, etc. What patterns do you want to focus on? What have you been focusing on in training? How's your mind? How's your sleep quality? How's your energy levels? How's your nutrition? So it's a bit of a monitoring component as well. And then in the match journal, it actually has like a post-match, I guess like a self-evaluation. So did you stick to the patterns that you planned to stick to? How was your mindset? All those things. So basically just backing up what I've gone through with you already. And it's absolutely fantastic, particularly for young players, to start to understand, this is how I think, this is what triggers me. These are the things that work well for me. Also, I'm playing this person again. I can't really remember what happened last time, but if they've got a journal with it in there, they go back and say they hit big backhand down the line. Forehand was a bit weak out wide, and then you've got some strategy there for the next match against the opponent. Once again, it just comes down to planning and preparation. So jump online, www.tennisfitness.com, go into the shop, check them out, and I'd love to hear if you end up buying them, what you think of it. Okay, so you've recorded your journal after the match. Now we're going to talk about some physical recovery, okay? So this is more, so between your matches, so you've got your eating. We'll go through your eating a little bit later on. Big thing is between matches is once the journal's filled out, you've done your stretching, etc. It's managing your energy levels. It's energy preservation. So we want to think, how can we get our energy levels up? Well, we know we can fuel our body, we can keep ourselves hydrated, but a big thing is staying out of the sun, not doing any form of exercise, so running around, playing chasings and those sorts of things, or whatever the case. And for adults, it's just a matter of, and younger athletes, it's a matter of just staying in the shade, read a book, listen to some music, and then by that stage, it's time to start switching on and going through your ritual of your before match ritual again. Okay, so energy preservation and getting energy into your body between matches is huge. All right, so we've sorted out our in-between matches strategies. Then you've played a couple of matches or one match over the day. What happens at the end of the day? All right, I'll tell you what happens for a lot of people. They walk off court and they think, I'm buggered. I'm going to go home and I'm going to jump in the car and get home and have something to eat, and that'll do me. I'll sit on the lounge. We want to try to create a couple of different habits than that. What we want to do is we want to potentially fill out the match journal if you haven't done that. When you get home, I always encourage people to go home and do their recovery at home, because I'll tell you the number one reason is, if you finish a lesson or you finish a match, you're generally not going to stick around unless you're super disciplined, and hats off to you if you are one of those people that can stick around and do a 45-minute recovery session at the courts. I encourage people straight away, start hydrating, get yourself home. If it's within 2 hours of you getting home, get yourself home. Within an hour of you finishing a match, you want to fuel your body. You want to have a carbohydrate and a protein, get that into your body to help your body start to recover. When you get home, we want to look at a couple of strategies. So one would be, what can we physically do to help us prepare better or to recover better, okay, for the next day? First thing is, and a lot of people are aware of these strategies, one would be an ice bath and one would be a hot bath, or some people like to do a contrast. So they'll do an ice bath and then they'll get into a hot shower or into a hot tub. A lot of people don't have the capacity to be able to do that. For me personally, I always responded well to ice baths. I started doing them with Leighton way before it was, I guess, common knowledge to do them. And basically Leighton used to jump in an ice bath, set it about between 10 to 12 degrees. We had this one that was imported from overseas that would just stay regulated at the same temperature. And he would be in there for 10 minutes straight. So he'd go in for 10 minutes and he would get out after that, shower, have something to eat, and then I would massage him. That was just when we were doing our pre-season training. So what I encourage people to do is to either ice bath. So I recommend just jumping in 10 minutes straight. And I'll tell you why I prefer that over a contrast, which is the hot cold. Because when you're staying in for 10 minutes straight, it's almost like an anti-inflammatory effect on your body. So if you've got any issues with your knees, your ankles, your hips, your lower back, you're sitting in that, submerged in that cold water for 10 minutes, it's going to start to eliminate a lot of that inflammation out in and around those joints. So that's why I highly recommend that. Some people respond really well to a hot bath. I probably would say most people would do better having a hot bath, so 15-minute hot bath. What temperature you set that in, it's really dependent on the individual, but getting in there for 15 minutes and dropping some good quality minerals in there as well, like some Epsom salts, is highly effective also. So they're the two things that I recommend. Some people like to do both, so they'll do an ice bath first, a couple of hours later they'll jump in a hot bath. But if you can do one or the other, the end of the day, I highly recommend that. You'll notice a huge difference. If you've got any injuries, well, I encourage you to buy a little ice pack. They're available pretty much anywhere now. So you can get the ones that they're actually it's like a sock, and you put the ice cubes in it, you screw the lid back on, and you have a strap. You can put it around your elbow, your knee, whatever the case. If not, just use some form of an ice pack or something like along those lines. What I recommend is 20 minutes on the site and 20 minutes off. So you go 20 on, 20 off, and you do that 2 to 3 rounds. So 2 to 3 times ideally is the best strategy for any injuries. So what do we consider an injury? Well, anything that sort of gets up around over a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale. So a 1 would be you can slightly feel it. A 5 would be it hurts, I can feel it all the time, but I can still play with it. And a 10 would be like you're getting carried off the court. So a 3 would be like it's mild discomfort, but you can feel like it's gradually getting worse. That's when you need to stop, get some advice, get some ice onto it before it starts to creep up around the 5, 6, 7 and beyond. All right. So after you've had your hot bath, you've iced your injuries, we can jump on the foam roller, go through, 20 minutes is enough. If you're lucky enough to have someone in the house or, access to massage, you get a 30-minute massage. Make sure you don't go too deep. It's more just to flush toxins and a build-up of lactic acid, etc., out of the body. You don't want to go too deep, because we go too deep the night before a massage, and particularly after playing, you've already got little tears in the muscles and the body's already fatigued. We don't want to go in any deeper and making that worse, which is what deep tissue massage does. It's breaking down to some capacity muscle tissue. So we just want to flush the body out. Same with the foam roller is really effective. You're not going to do too much damage with that. So once again, hit your tension spots and try and release that out prior to the next day. All right, and that's all good. So you're done for the end of the day, you're prepared, jump into sleep, jump into bed. Once again, you wake up the next day, you start with your morning rituals from the morning, from what we did the day before. So you got your breathing and visualization, you got your mobility, you've prepared your snacks, you're ready to go, you walk out the court, and it just becomes habitual. We need to create those long-term habits. So I've been mentioning food quite a bit. We discussed the hydration. I gave you a little bit of advice around that. So I'm actually running with a good friend of mine, Aidan Cronk from Mooloolaba Tennis Club and KT Academy. We're running a tennis camp, and I know most of you here are from overseas, so you guys aren't going to be able to get here. But we're running our camp this coming weekend. So Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, and basically it's going to be a little bit more in depth of what we're going through here tonight. We're actually going to be going through almost like a manual and getting players to really understand what has to happen, leading into and on the day of matches. And the food's a big part of that. We're going to spend a big chunk of the time that, and then we're going to get players to prepare food and so they understand what's what, when you have it, and those sorts of things. And I want to go through with you guys now some options for you, the night before. Pretty much the night before is going to stay the same most of the time. Most players are going to find what fuels them best, what makes them feel the best the next day. We want to encourage you to eat the night before like some carbohydrates. So I always encourage people to have brown rice. It's low GI. We've got a lot of fibre in there. It's a great form of source of energy. So brown rice with some vegetables, any particularly green veggies. We're getting a lot of phytonutrients out of those, which are going to help our body the next day. And some form of protein. So, like white fish is good. It's nice and light. Same with chicken. Some people might want to eat red meat. The issue I have with red meat the night before is it can keep people up at night, give them a restless sleep. It definitely does for me. So I like to sort of steer clear from that. So my options would be a form of carbohydrate the night before a match. So it could be some wholemeal pasta, some brown rice, something along those lines, and a good source of protein and some vegetables thrown in. Dessert, ideally just have a piece of fruit, and you're off and racing, get yourself into bed, and you'll be feeling pretty good the next day. So when we talk about protein, carbohydrates, in particular, we're going to just focus on those two for a moment. So let's just talk about carbohydrates. So for those of you out there, I'm going to keep it really simple. What a carbohydrate does is we need to look at it almost like as energy. Okay, so that's what our body's going to break down, and we're going to use that for energy. So, you know, tennis is classified as a power endurance sport. So we need to have that sustenance, and we need to have that consistency, and that's going to help do it the carbohydrates. So, you know, things like wholemeal bread, wholemeal pasta, brown rice, you know, things along those lines are really good sources of carbohydrate fuel for us. Okay, let's talk a little bit about protein. Okay, so protein is anything basically that's like fleshy, and we've also got nuts and things like that in there. So a protein could be like your fish, your chicken, your turkey, your beef, and then we look at also, you know, like high protein content in legumes, so things like beans and lentils and things like that for our vegetarians, and also nuts also. So basically what proteins are going to do for our body is they're going to help with recovery. So we're not too concerned about having too much protein in the morning prior to a match. We want to more have our carbohydrates in the morning, and the night before we want to have a combination of both. So I'd like to probably go like 60-40, even 70-30 with a ratio depending on the age of the player. So 60% carbohydrate and 30 to 40% of the meal would be a protein, and the vegetables would fall into the carbohydrate category also. And that's how I would break the meals down the night before. Now, the morning of matches and tournaments, what are you going to eat? Okay, well, we know we need energy for the day. We haven't really done too much to break anything down in our body, so we don't need so much protein-rich food. So we want a carbohydrate. So we want to once again look at some whole grains. So the best whole grain breakfast you can have, and a lot of young players always go, ugh, like that until I actually make it for them and show them how it can taste quite nice, is some traditional oats porridge. So we get our traditional oats, we put them in the pot. We put some water and a little bit of milk in. You can put a little bit of honey in there. Let it cook over about a 10 to 15 minute period, nice and low, and there you go. Then you can pour a bit of milk, cut some fruit up and put it on top. In my opinion, that is the best breakfast you can have. It's low GI. We've got some good whole grains. You're going to get some great energy out of that throughout the whole day. Some other options, you know, some players get a bit nervous in the morning and they find it hard to digest. You know, you can just look at having a couple of pieces of wholemeal toast with a little bit of honey on it, and also, you know, some piece of fruit. Worst case scenario will be okay for an athlete, in particular a banana, but I try to encourage some form of a whole grain breakfast. And also, you know, if someone wanted to have a couple of pieces of wholemeal toast with some eggs on it, that's totally fine as well, to get a bit of protein in there also. Okay, so we've got our breakfast sorted out. I try to steer clear of dairy because some people can take a little bit longer to digest the fat, etc., out of the dairy, and it can keep people feeling a little bit bloated. And then you're constantly trying to sip on your water as well. And if that yogurt and milk and etc. is high amount of milk from your breakfast cereal is sitting in your belly, it's not nice. And that's why if you're having highly processed foods and highly processed breakfast, it's not great for your digestive system prior to playing matches. A lot of times they're full of so much sugar, you're going to get a massive spike. So like the opposite of like the traditional oats, which give you more consistent energy like this. When you're having your sugar-rich foods, they're going to take you up. By the time you get on court, you're going to be back down, way down here, which is not where you want to be. Okay, so you got your whole grains, good quality breakfast, throw a bit of fruit in there. Okay, so you get to the match and you get there and you're rained out. Next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock and you're thinking, geez, I'm a little bit hungry. What can I eat? You'd eat what you'd have in a match. So you've got your banana, you've got your muesli bar, you've got your rice crackers. You can work around that and come up with something that works well for you. But you want things that are high, like carbohydrate content, that are more whole grain based once again. During a match, spoke about that, muesli bar, banana, we just went over that. And then after your match, well, now you've played your match, you know, internally we need to think our body is, it's like, you know, where every time we exercise and we push ourselves, we're almost doing like minor damage to our tissues, and we need to replenish our energy levels and our hydration levels. So we've taken a lot out, but to do that, we've done a little bit of internal damage, which is fine because it can heal and it will heal over the 24 to 48 hours, but we need to help that process. So we hydrate and we get some carbohydrate in to get our energy levels up and help them replenish. But then we got to get our muscle fibers and connective tissue sorted out too. So we have our protein. So we combine the hydration with the carbohydrate with the protein. So once again, you would go and have for dinner after your last match of the day what you had the night before. So you had your carbohydrate, you had your protein, and you had your veggies. That's exactly what you'd have to help yourself start to recover for the next day. Nice and simple, and encourage people to, you know, come up with what works best for you within what I've just explained to you. Now, the main things I need you to avoid to help you perform at your best, and a massive tip, is to avoid anything that's highly processed. One thing that does my head in is when I go to junior tournaments these days is seeing all the highly processed packs of chips, hot chips, chocolate bars, and that's a lot of time what the kids, the only thing they have options to are those sorts of things. So that's where you've got to actually prepare your food the night before and control what you can control. Okay, so how would that work? Well, we know on match day, okay, we need our carbohydrates. So you've packed your muesli bars, you've packed a banana. Okay, what else can you have? What can you have for lunch? Because you're going to need to have something substantial. Okay, well, you can make a wrap, put some salad and put some turkey on it. If you want to put a bit of mayo on there, that's okay. Just don't go too overboard with the dressings. All right, but that's not an overly processed meal. Okay, if you're having like some chicken breast with some good quality salad, and you're having some good, say, whole grain bread or a good whole grain wrap, that's a fantastic option for you. Steering clear from, you know, your hot dogs, your hot chips, your packet chips. Once again, your body's going to burn a lot of fuel to break that down, and you're going to feel like, particularly after a match, you're already fatigued, pre-fatigued. You don't want to eat that and feel like, oh, I need to have a sleep. Then you've got to get up and get going for a match. Okay, so it's really, really challenging to do. So steer clear from your processed foods, get your whole grains, prepare everything the night before, have the sandwiches made, get some sushi for you, get some sushi on the way to the matches, and cut up some, you know, vegetable sticks, so some carrots, cucumber, celery, capsicum, whatever you like, a little bit of hummus, a couple of pieces of cheese, and have them for snacks also. Really, really good idea to do that, and that's what I do, and I do that a lot for my athletes that I work with. Also, some people also like to have like a protein shake, and look, to be honest with you, I encourage players from 14 onwards. I don't see an issue with them having a good quality protein supplement at the end of the day. I highly recommend something that's more vegan-based, so a plant-based protein powder, like a chickpea protein powder. I use them myself, and I find them the most effective and a lot easier to digest as well. Mix them with cold water. Mightn't taste the best. Some players don't mind them. Drink them down, and it does the job in helping your body to recover. So what I want to do to finish off with is just take you through, some training that you can do a couple of days out from the tournament. We have a range of programs. Once again, you can go to our website, www.tennisfitness.com, and click on our online programs. We've got a range of programs there. We also offer individualised programs. So for people that don't want a generic program, if you're looking for something that's more specific for your needs, we actually offer 10-week, 20-week, and we also have a 52-week option. But the 52-week option is more I guess, specialised, and there's certain criteria people need to meet to get that sort of attention. But you can go online and check out a range of products and things that we offer there. And a lot of them, you can get some great ideas in our programs on how to prepare for matches, and, what sort of things you should be doing in your matches. Now, one thing that I encourage everyone to do 48 hours before a match is to do like an injury prevention program focusing on ankles, so doing some ankle stability work, some lower abdominal work, and some rotational work. So looking at like what we call anti-rotation and all that. Once again, this stuff's in a lot of our programs, and shoulder girdle. So targeting the shoulder girdle. Why do we want to do that? Well, we want to make sure these areas are like stimulated. We want to see where they're at. So you know that if you're doing something like, well, that doesn't feel too good, well, we need to get yourself off to see someone before you jump on court and play matches. So doing your injury prevention program for 48 hours before. And look, we can combine that with like a footwork and agility routine. And the day before you play a match, I encourage people to, if you're going to hit 45 minutes to an hour absolute max, no need to do any form of fitness training the day before. 48 hours before is fine. Preserve your energy, start to go through your rituals, and get yourself ready to go. So look, I think that's enough from me. What I'd like to do is get a bit of feedback from you guys. If you guys have got any questions for me, you can just shoot me through an email, respond to the email that I would have sent out to you earlier on, and I will endeavour to get back to you. I'm just working at the moment, finalising like some eating options the night before, the day of a match, and after matches, like some eating options for people. So just, I guess, going a bit more in depth on what I've just gone through with you here. So if anyone's interested in that, stick that in the email and say, yeah, I'd love to have a look through that, and I can send that off to you when I get that finalised over the next few days. Apart from that, everyone, thanks for joining me. I hope you can get a lot out of that on our camp on the weekend, the Competitive Edge camp. We're going to be going through this, like I said, but we're also going to be doing a lot of work on court, working with Aidan Cronk and Pat Flynn for Mentally Tough Tennis, and working at some strategies to help players deal with matches and how they can handle things better during matches. But once again, thanks for joining me. Hope you got a lot out of it. Love to hear from you soon, and we'll catch you next time. We're going to look to run these webinars every month. So if you've got anything else that you want to hear about and get some advice around that's tennis fitness based, stick it in an email at info@tennisfitness.com, and we'll get back to you and see how we go. Thanks, guys. Catch you soon. Bye.